Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutcher Gaming and a new video on the channel. Just going through the changes, mainly to Lightning Strike from the patch notes for 320. Go through what my league plan starts are for the new league in terms of builds. And really just outline my thoughts on what I'm going to do in the first week. Now, there's obviously still reveals to come in terms of what the Vile melee skills are. But at the moment, I don't trust their new skills ever. I don't want to build a league starter around a skill that I don't know what it's going to do. So I'm just going to go with builds that I know work that can then transition into something else later. So first thing we're going to do is look at the elusive. So if we go to Nightblade. So this is the first nerf to any claw melee build. And this is quite a biggie. And this was really the only thing that was making most melee builds viable because it was just a huge increase in crit multi. You could get an average crit multi of about 600% without even really speccing into anything, which in... just elusive alone, yes, that's broken, but it masks the fact that melee skills are awful. And in all honesty, the changes they've made have not fixed them, which will come through in a bit. So the change to elusive is Withering Step could be used to keep up a far stronger elusive effect on average, especially in combination with Nightblade support. Normally, you have to wait for elusive to gradually lose effectiveness and fall off before you get it again, but Withering Step could replace that. They basically now made it that Withering Step can't apply elusive when you're already elusive. So you could use Withering Step, but only once your elusive runs out, so it's pretty pointless. This is a big nerf, especially because you stack elusive effect. So with a normal Lightning Strike or any claw elusive build, you're going to have a 220% effect of elusive, and you're resetting it with Withering Step when you get down to about 160. So you're going to have an average elusive effect of about 190%. Now it's just going to tick 220 all the way down to 0. So let's say your average DPS is based on 110% elusive. It's a good chunk of damage. It's about 20% less damage that you're doing. And there's also the defensive aspect in that when you're elusive, you have a big chance to avoid damage from hits. And obviously, the lesser the effect, the less chance you've got to avoid that damage. It was a big defensive aspect that a lot of people overlook. So now we'll have a look to the changes to Lightning Strike itself, which I think personally are over the top. Nerfing elusive already makes the build not great. Maybe, yes, they needed to reduce the projectiles, but putting it down to 2 is just insane. So we'll go through it for those that haven't seen it. So the change in the number of projectiles that Lightning Strike fires to 2, and that's at gem level 1 or gem level 30. You can only fire 2 projectiles, which is really bad for clear, considering they don't have any sort of chain or anything like that on them. It used to be 4 at gem level 1 and then 7 at gem level 20. They've also said quality on Lightning Strike no longer provides increased damage. What it does provide, they haven't said. The Vile quality is no longer increased damage as well. And they've said quality on Divergent no longer fires 0 to 2 projectiles. It has chance to shock enemies, which is the biggest waste of time ever because you're a crit build. You're going to shock enemies 100% of the time. This seems like just something they added in at the last second. And just to hammer home on the nerf to projectiles, there was a helmet enchant before where you could get up to 3 additional projectiles. It's now up to 2. So to get just half pretty much of the projectiles that you had before, you have to have a lab enchant. So that already kind of causes a problem because the less projectiles you have, the less clear that you have. So overall, I think the build will still be viable. It needs lots of changes. If you wanted to get Lightning Strike to work as a skill, it can, but I would not league start with it. It was not the easiest league starter anyway. Also, they've nerfed Spectral Helix, which I'm not going to go through because I don't use Spectral Helix as a skill at endgame. But they've nerfed it massively for leveling and endgame to about 60% of the damage it was before. So, yeah, you've got the issue that Helix probably won't feel that great for leveling, and then you've then got to try and get this Lightning Strike build to work. So it's certainly not something I'll be bringing a guide out on or trying until much later in the league. So the other thing to look at is they've changed the tree to put strike skills target 1 additional enemy into the tree. But in my eyes, it's sort of a nerf, especially a nerf to Lightning Strike builds or builds that use projectiles as part of their damage. So if we go into Path of Building, so what they've done is moved this node here onto the mastery. So there's a mastery at the moment that says strike skills which target additional enemies can do so from 30% further away. That's going. It's now going to be strike skills can target 1 additional enemy. This node is going to be strike skills apply splash damage to nearby enemies. So these nodes combined, I would agree, they are a buff. It's a shame you can't anoint that anymore, but they're only a buff if you're this side of the tree. So yes, if you're a duelist, you're fine. If you're a jug marauder, you can come down and get this. As a raider, to come down and get that is never going to happen. That is a huge, huge opportunity cost to get that. You're talking like probably 18 points deviation to get that. Now you can get the strike skills here, but you don't get the melee splash. And these are not ideal for lightning strike because they're all melee damage, so you don't get any prod juiciness. So I honestly don't think that's much of a buff to melee unless you are one of these two ascendancies. So I would say it's a buff to duelist and jug. It is not a buff to melee because the mastery is stuck over here. Now I get it. The mastery has to go somewhere. They've picked strike skills, which makes sense. It's just a shame that assassin and raider historically have lots of melee builds and they're kind of not able to access all this stuff. And it would mean if you could, if they just, I don't know, not move the wheel, had another wheel here that did a similar thing, you could actually level maybe Frostblades because you don't need to run Ancestral Call, or you don't need to run Melee Splash to make clear not feel terrible, but you're not going all the way over here. For Frostblades, you could probably go here. I think it's debatable if you go down here, but if you do, you can get all your Frenzy charges here. You can maybe get Determination, Reservation, and then you could get the strike skills here. But you're not doing that until much, much later on. That's going to be when you're already in maps. And then by then, you're probably very close to getting your +1 strike gloves. So they're the changes in terms of Lightning Strike. Now, the melee build that interests me, but I have a horrible feeling it's going to be super, super popular, is Heat Shiver Frostblades. So Frostblades did rely on elusive, but the added damage on Frostblades was really low. It was 175 at level 20, and it's now going to be 225. And on my Frostblades character, I end up with more DPS than I would before, and that's with the elusive nerf. Your elusive, you basically have to take a lot of DPS off of it and say the average point is 50%, but there's times when you're obviously doing 100, there's times when you're doing 0. But with Frostblades, as I say, because the damage effectiveness has been buffed massively, and I did this with Lightning Strike in 3.15, I think, and the damage increase is huge. So if we go to my POB, so this is my current POB with a few tweaks because of the nerfs that are coming in. But if we just take that damage as an example, so the way damage effectiveness works is it's for all of your damage, and I've tested this with loads of POBs for skills that don't get additional damage, and it's exactly the same. So all you would do is, I've got 10.5 million DPS, and I have 175 damage effectiveness, so my damage is 60k. However, in the new league, I'm going to have 225 damage effectiveness, and that is 13.5 million. That is a 3 million increase on DPS. It's about, 30-odd% increase in DPS. The elusive nerf is going to be about 20%. You're also probably not going to take these dagger nodes anymore because they work out probably about 2 to 3% a point. So you can respec them elsewhere. So I've decided to go with a big thread of hope, pick up attack speed here and dex and int, get some crit multi and some crit chance, and then pick up another claw node here. So this is what I would do if I played Frostblades. It is a build I definitely want to play and would love to league start it. My issue is, it's getting more and more popular, Heat Shiver, and it is a super, super common unique, but some of the other uniques that make the build tick, like Yoka Suffering, is not that common. If lots of people play this build, that's going to be much more expensive. And the boots Legacy of Fury are already expensive because they're Righteous Fire boots. Let's say a big streamer brings out a Frostblades Heat Shiver guide. These boots are going to be 5 to 6 divines on League Start. The helmet, I don't think it'll ever be expensive. It's so common. I think I found it on every playthrough I've ever done. Yoke, not as common though, and that could end up being a few divines as well. And it makes the build expensive. It's a really, really good build. I will showcase the build now, just for a quick map to show you what it's like. And this is a lower DPS version because I've wanted to build some tankiness in. So I'm running Determination, Grace, I've got Fortify, I've got Endurance charges, I've obviously got Elusive. They make a massive difference to survivability. I can pretty much AFK in maps with this build to an extent. So we'll go and do this map here. So we've got the only thing you need to avoid on this build. Don't avoid elements because we're not going to do damage if we don't. And then I try and avoid monsters can't be slowed because it ruins a lot of our defensive capabilities. But if we just get a Chaos Orb on this, Temp Chains, Desecrated Ground. Yeah, so this is fine. Temp Chains will obviously slow us down a bit. I've put Elusive back on because we're going to get even more damage with the Frostblade's increase in damage. So it's not misrepresentative to use this. We'll stick Maven on. I don't know what one Enslaver is, but we'll go and give it a go. And then you'll see how fun this build is. And this is, I've spent a bit on it, but none of the gear is like crazy expensive. So obviously we've got temp chain, so we're going to be a little bit slower than we would normally. But it is just literally a case. There's a boss down here. No. You just run around and hit Frostblades. You don't have to do anything. And because we're not going to be resetting elusive anymore with Withering Step, you probably won't even need to use Whirling Blades. You'll just run because your elusive will keep you really, really quick. And then you maybe Whirling Blades once your elusive is done. So we'll just wait here for this boss, and then we'll go in. So that should be him phased already. It is. As you see, 50% shock, 30% chill. Oh, it's not the chaos damage one. So phased again. But the build is pretty nuts, which is why I think a lot of people are going to play it as soon as people get wind of it. The build just does crazy damage. And like I say, this is on a tanky version. I've sacrificed a lot of DPS on this build. I had it doing double the DPS before, did the feared and all those sorts of things, but I was dying and I didn't want to die. So I wanted a build that I could maybe get to 100. I got bored of POE in the end, but yeah, you just don't die when you're at. The only reason I died here is because I tried Uber bossing and I'm rubbish at Uber bosses. And also this is probably the one thing the build can't do because it's very hard to get enough damage to shock Uber bosses. So this is my plan for my build, but I'm not going to level it with Frostblades. In case Heat Shiver is expensive or rare, I don't want to level through the campaign with Frostblades. Don't really want to use Steel Skills, and Helix looks like it's taking a massive hit. So what I'm going to be doing for League Start is I'm going to be leveling Rain of Arrows purely as a build to get my 2 Watchstones and get my map completion done. Then I can take stock after like a day or two, see whether the Frostblades build is viable. Is it expensive? Because Lightning Strike's been nerfed, is everything dirt cheap? Can I sneak in there and get a Lightning Strike build going? Can we try something totally different? If all of them are a bust, I'll save up and transition to Tornado Shot Deadeye. But Frostblades Radiant is what I want to do, but I'm not confident League starting it because it needs the uniques, because it's Frostblades. Without it, it's not very good. So my plan is Rain of Arrows starter. There's going to be a full build guide, but I will say time and time again in that guide that this is just to get my first 2 Void Stones and get mapping. It's not going to be shredding DPS. I want to do it as cheap as possible. You can obviously build it more expensive, get it doing more content, but I don't want to do that. The purpose of this build is to spend as little as I can and make as much as I can to then go and do a build that works a bit better at endgame. That's it for this video. I'm pretty pumped for the League. The mechanic looks really, really cool, and it's something I'll definitely be spending a lot of time in as long as they've not absolutely cocked it up, which we'll find out in a week. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.